We now return to Let's Play Heart of the Forest. So, looking at the listing on the menu there, we're about 73% of the way through the game, so we should be done shortly. Back to the beginning. I am sitting on a bus. The sun streaming through the windows is making it hard to see. The narrow road cuts through a dense old forest. My mind wanders. I remember doing something important, walking among the trees, looking for something, losing something I loved, gaining something unwanted. But then I'm fully awake and the memories scatter away. We're almost there, says Anya. I did some searching. She looks at me from over her phone. And this place is amazing. The last primordial forest in Europe. Can't be the last one. Can it? I'm not able to finish. I start to cough. Should probably... Let's even this out. I spit up blood. My throat is sore. My lungs hurt. Let's get out of here. I hit the window and it moves, but doesn't break. It's gray and dull, and some of it stays on my hand. The substance is sticky and makes my skin itch. Spiders. My hand is crawling with thousands of tiny spiders, weaving their webs around it with tremendous speed. The whole bus is filled with them. Alright, go ahead and scream. Lower this down. I try to scream, but they gag me the moment I open my mouth. A few seconds later I am covered in cobwebs, unable to move. There's a hiss. I hear a hiss. Then slowly, a long, dark, bloody shape comes out of Anya's eye socket, pushing the eye out. A black snake that reeks of rotten meat, acid, and oil. Don't fight, Maia. You're already mine, it says, just like your grandpa. Then it kisses me. Chapter 5, The Plan. Oh, did that? Oh, no, it's just the background. I moused over it and it looked like it moved. I thought it was interactive. Loose ends. I woke up in my bed in the B&B and for a moment thought the whole werewolf business had been a dream. Then I heard a startled breath, looked up and saw Anya looking at me with wide eyes. What happened? Where were you? She asked. I was scared shitless. So much to talk about. I didn't know where to start. How was I? I'm all right. Sorry for disappearing so suddenly, I said, because what else could I say? Tell a version of the truth. I mean, she's loyal. We've been kind of, sort of, I mean, up to a point, we've told her the truth, so... I got lost in the forest. Technically, that part wasn't a lie. Then I stumbled on the activists, and I kind of got carried away. I was worried about her. Are you all right? I asked. I was worried about you. Yeah, said Anya, scratching her head. After we were separated in the forest, I got lost and somehow ended up here. Hadn't she seen us? Well, that would bring suspicion, so let's just be happy with what's going on here. She was telling me what she thought was true. She had no recollection of seeing werewolves. So Pat was right. The human mind couldn't cope with seeing a Krynos. And when the delirium ended, the subconsciousness patched the holes in their memory with something rational. But how are you feeling? Asked Anya. I wanted to tell her everything. We just went through this. I packed my bag in silence. I felt a rift growing between me and Anya, and I felt a sudden urge to tell her everything. I'll tell her something she can understand. A little bit of honor, that's not the way we're supposed to be going, right? We're supposed to be going through wisdom and whatever that means. I couldn't tell her the truth. I was a Garou and I had a sacred duty to protect the veil, hiding us from mortal eyes, but I could tell her something. I learned something important about myself, I said, and I have to follow it for a while. Sorry for the sudden change of plan. I sighed and continued packing. So you're leaving? Asked Anya. What about the forest? Didn't know how to answer. I shrugged. Whatever the answer was, it was now Maia the werewolf's problem. Maia the student was dead. I'll be in touch. Anya hugged me. You'll figure it out. I sighed, took my bag, and left. Everything according to plan. I dropped my bags in the camp and ran through the plan one more time. They expected me to act like a turge, but we'd also discussed other plans, both more mundane. Okay, just to remind myself here, we deal with spirits and visions and omens, so I guess here, turge, spirits, rituals. That will be the first place we go. The Tempest. I needed to talk to the spirits of the forest, and for that I needed Lisa's help. Until I came along, she was the only shaman in the two packs, so she was happy to finally have an apprentice. I had a lot to learn. Before I could face the spirits, I had to attune to the Pushcha and learn the proper rites and meanings of addressing the spirits. Finally, we were ready. Yeah, I guess we did this, huh? Our goal now is to use the spirits to stop the logging. After a few days of camping in the forest, fasting and meditating, Lisa said that I was ready. Only a few days, huh? That's amazing. The spirits of the forest were waiting. The sun was setting. We stood in the middle of the clearing and waited. Well, okay, so, from a game standpoint, I feel like there's going to be a showdown with Olga at some point, at which point I feel like having a high rage would be good, but right now I don't think it's going to be helpful. And I'd like to keep my health as much as possible, since the game just decides arbitrarily how much health you lose when you lose health, so I guess let's take out willpower. That's easy enough to get back, because we can make decisions that, according to this, regain it. So, make a pact with the spirits to use them to stop the logging, beat the rite of passage, and earn your place in the sept. Okay, so yeah, I mean, willpower is the one resource that seems to be pretty easy to get back, so I chant some words. I chanted the proper words and called upon the secret names of the forest. Then we waited. First there was a murmur, then a whisper among the trees, a rustle of the leaves in the quiet, windless night. Close your eyes and listen, how about? I closed my eyes and the smell of feathers in the night washed over me. Something whispered inside my skull, a voice like small claws scratching bone. What do you want? It asked. We wanted justice. Send the wind and send the rain, O great forest, I chanted. Drown their machines in the mud. Break the dead trees so they fall on their heads. We want justice. The rustling continued and the scratching became almost unbearable. Yes, whispered the voice inside my skull. There is a price. Okay, I don't know what to expect. I tensed up, not sure what to expect. Hunt us, young one. Find and catch us, and then we will help you. Then the presence was gone. Lisa looked at me. The fuck are you waiting for? She snapped. Hunt! I will change. Monstrous. No, this is... Okay, that's the war form. Heavy things. Majestic animal with all advantages and limitations. Smart, fast, heavy, scary. Okay, we probably don't need to be that, although I don't know. This would be probably a good one for tracking and such, but I don't know. Would this be better? Let's do the lupus form. So this is interesting because this seems like this is going to change the story depending on what I go for. I'm going to go full wolf on this one. I was lupus, the wolf form. I doubled down in pain. My arms and legs cracked and twisted. My skull fractured and reset itself in a different shape. Fragments of bone crawling under the skin. My skin was rippling and sprouting fur. I howled in agony. When the pain subsided, I was lupus, a wolf, seeing the world in smells and sounds. We'll sniff the air. I guess it gives me an option to change into something else if I pick the wrong one. I was on all fours, my nose full of scents, my ears full of noises. I turned my head left and right, sniffing the air. There. I caught the scent and jumped toward a shape that emerged from the nearby bushes. It was a stag, pretty and lithe, a perfect vessel for the spirits. It stood there for a moment, and then it caught my scent and bolted. Run! The stag was fast, but I was faster. I smelled its fear and heard its hooves beating the ground. With every pounce, I was closing the distance between us. Now, thing is, I mean, I am pretty confident a full-grown wolf could take down a stag, but I do not know how common it is for a single wolf to try to make the kill when they hunt in packs. Getting closer. I could smell its sweat, hear its heartbeat in the darkness. Okay, lunge forward and catch the prey, or boost my... Like, why would I want to do this? Why would I want to get even angrier? I suppose it would help me in a fight, but presuming that we're going to change, I don't want it to affect the options. But I don't know. Like, I don't actually know what this affects, other than it affects my options. Like, why would it change the story? Now, let's just make sure we get it. I was not letting my prey get away. There was no way that I was letting my prey get away. It was almost too easy. I launched from the ground with my hind legs and landed on the stag's back. The hunt was over. I killed the prey. I dug my claws into its flanks and toward its throat. Warm blood filled my mouth and I felt the stag go limp. And then it was only a heap of meat and bones. The spirit escaped. Something moved behind me. Something moved behind me, something big. Should probably change this, huh? War form? Let's go full-on war form. Not even in the middle. Pain hit me like a wrecking ball. Every bone in my body breaks and moves and resets. I roar in agony. Panting and growling, I rise and rise and rise. I'm an 8-foot-tall killing machine, and I will attack. Pushcha didn't like that. I turned to attack, but when I saw what was behind me, I stopped in my tracks. At first I thought it was a bison standing there with its head lowered, but then it straightened and stood on its hind legs. Ivy was wrought around its arms, and its eyes were dark and wise. "Maia," it said in a voice so deep it shook my bones. "It's you." Do I want to attack? I guess I have no choice. I'm now in war form, so I hit the forest straight in the chest with all my weight. Its swing knocked me over. It slaps the side of my head. Go for the throat, I guess. Probably shouldn't back down when we're in a war form. I howled and go for its throat. It hits me back, but I lock my jaws and tear at it. It tosses me on the ground. Whew, we're losing a lot here. I feel like maybe I'm supposed to lose this, but I am relentless. The fight is hard, but I'm relentless. We fight, and nothing else matters. Suddenly the beast collapses and almost crushes me. Guess I barely escape. It was Hamid, the human form. I rolled away at the last moment, and I stood up. The spirit was looking at me with its dark, inscrutable eyes. "You fought well," it said, its voice like a clamor of birds now. "We will help you." I bowed. "Want some glory on that one. Calling the spirits to stop the logging. Okay." "Thank you," I said. When I looked up, the spirit was gone, but I knew the Pushcha was watching and waiting for my sign. A moment of triumph. I couldn't wait for the Sept meeting that morning. Closing the deal with the spirit was my rite of passage, and I knew that I did great. The plan had been sound and perfectly executed. We met soon after the sunrise. In the same clearing where I woke up for the first time as a Garou. Lisa looked at us all and smiled. Our patrons were looking at her expectantly, so she stepped toward the center of the clearing. "I am the Turge of this sept, and I'm here to make sure we do things the right way." I held my breath. She turned to me, and I held my breath. "Maia, come forth. Are you a cub who seeks recognition as an adult?" I answered, "Sure." "I am," I answered solemnly. "Are you an applicant to a tribe?" Lisa asked again. I confirmed. "I am," I answered. "Who speaks for the cub?" asked Olga, stepping forward. "I do," Lisa answered. "I am Zoria of the Cyberak Wowzers." So wait a minute, if she pronounces it Cyberak, I don't even remember the naming convention. Of course I didn't look it up. "I am Zoria of the Cyberak, Thurge of the Morning Wolf Mother Pack. I observed the cub on her mission, and I'm here to tell the story." Secret names? I guess that's cool. The wolf name. I'm kind of curious about that, rather than taking a flippant tone to it, I guess. But I don't. I'm assuming we're gonna find out. Like, I hate the questioning here because I don't know if this is like a question in her head, or if I just blatantly, do I have to take a new name? Like, just completely. Let's just go with this one. I wondered if they all had cool secret names. They probably had. I love the ancient spiritual vibe of it all. Was the cub past her challenge? Asked Olga. Well, that's not for me to blurt out, so I'll hold my breath. I knew how it all happened, but I held my breath nevertheless. Lisa is cautious. She succeeded, was the answer, but it was pure luck. She's not ready. Olga shook her head. She succeeded, and that means she's ready. Lisa turned to me. Have you chosen your name? Lisa turned to me. My new secret name. Suddenly I remembered my grandfather talking about his old friends. He never used their real names. They were always Thunder or Gray or Needle. I'd always thought it was a guerrilla thing, some kind of war names. Now I wasn't so sure anymore. How to capture my whole life, my aspirations, my personality, my heritage in one name. I cleared my throat. I mean, I suppose this would be technically correct for the character, seeing as how she's supposed to be the spiritual mystic who is trying to clear her name for her family. I mean, it's a little on the nose, but sure. My new name is Cassandra, I answered, thinking of all my precognitions that even I hadn't believed. As for the tribe, choosing the tribe was another matter. What was the black furry again? So the glasswalkers are the... Hold on a minute, I'm going to have to... That... Okay, so the glasswalkers are the urbanites, the black fury are the feminist Amazons, and the bone gnars are strongly independent. Now, we did say earlier I was from the city. I was thinking maybe more along this, but maybe we should go with the glasswalkers. Now, who's the glasswalker in the tribe? I forget that, too. Lesser status, turn to advantage when enemies underestimate them. So, okay, I mean, bone gnars sound similar to Nosferatu in that they remain out of sight, that they... Spies, information gatherers, hill folk comprised of, they've eschewed life in the city for the wilderness, deserters, seeking sanctuary for the apocalypse, road wardens, okay, the nomads. You know what, I think it's probably more appropriate for the glasswalkers. Choosing the tribe was another matter. After getting to know all of them better, I decided to become a glasswalker. Pat agreed to mentor me. Oh good, because we're friends. Only one thing remained to end the ceremony and make me a full-fledged Garou. I had to join a pack. I'd already sworn to the Wolf Mother. As my fate had already been tied to the Wolf Mother, I chose her as my patron and joined Olga's pack. There was no love lost between me and Olga, but I was a valuable addition to her pack, and she was good enough a leader to recognize it. So it was done. According to ancient rites, Lisa painted the mystical glyph of my tribe on my sternum. It disappeared after a moment, but whenever I closed my eyes I could feel its warm touch between my breasts. Cassandra of the Glasswalkers, Turge of the Morning Wolf Mother Pack, welcome to our sept, she said solemnly. Then she howled. Howls rose toward the sky. They sang about ancient laws of war, status, and secrecy. I remembered only a few. Combat the worm, wherever it dwells and whenever it breeds. Submit to those of higher station. Respect those beneath you. The veil shall not be lifted. This is very vampire-ish. I joined the song. My honor is now going up here. Think of Cleath. I threw my head back and howled with my sept. I was a cub no more. I was ready to tell my own stories, to earn my own place in the pack, to howl my own songs. Okay. We are now a Cleath. a young Garo, not yet of significant rank. Honor has gone up, which is not quite what we were meant to be doing. We were meant to be gaining willpower, or wisdom. Call the spirits to stop the logging. We earn glory, honor, and wisdom to make our own legends. Okay, but like to be a Turge, we were supposed to be going with wisdom. I'm kind of not. So that's a thing. Anyway. Chapter 6, The Storm. Start the chapter. Dust to dust. It was one of those blistering summer days when the asphalt melts, the grass withers, and the air smothers those brave enough to step outside. Despite the heat, it felt like the whole village was at the funeral. I was there as well. I stood there, surrounded by the grieving crowd, looking at the rosaries they clutched in their fists. It was surreal. The body of a hunter had been found in the forest. The circumstances of their death were unclear. There had been more deaths. There had been more deaths over the last days, but they slipped under the radar. We'd been careful in covering our tracks, or nobody had connected the dots yet. Since the deaths, I'd started seeing shadowy figures, their faces flickering in the corner of my eye. Were they just figments of my imagination, or my own pack of hungry spirits following me, waiting for my mistake? I could feel the tension seething around me. This death, this funeral had pushed the community, already weary and frightened by the recent disappearances in the forest, to the edge. The world was watching. The press had swarmed to the funeral like flies. I could hear them squawking about eco-terrorism and aggressive vegan activists. The police were watching the crowd with disinterest as they leaned lazily against the trees. It had become political. Suddenly, Puszka Białowieża had become politically charged and the hottest place to be in Poland. And it wasn't only local politicians and activists from both sides who'd caught wind of the commotion. The Minister of Environment himself had driven to Białowieża to attend the funeral. He was standing next to the priest conducting the ceremony, surrounded by police and what looked like a handful of bodyguards. The coffin went down and the crowd stirred. Everyone started lining up to throw a handful of dirt on the coffin or put flowers on the grave. I felt someone joining me. "Let's look at them," said Lisa, joining me. "Nobody wants us here. They fear us, but would never admit that." I mean, I guess I can't blame them if they know what they're fighting. Who could blame them? I shrugged. Since we started the protest, people have been disappearing. They would want us gone even if we weren't the Garo, she scoffed. From the outside, we're activists fighting for the Puszka, but for the local, we're just strangers barging in and telling them what to do with their lives. I mean, technically speaking, we were that. Like, I've made a point of this earlier. Well, we are strangers barging in and telling them what to do, I shrugged. But sometimes you need a stranger to see what you have before your very eyes. Nevertheless, she was right. The crowd was not happy seeing us there, and the minister knew how to use that sentiment. I listened in disbelief. I watched in disbelief as the priest handed him the mic. After 30 seconds, I understood very clearly whose side he was on. He repeated some platitudes, but it was clear he'd only come to show his face and tighten the leash on the local logging companies. The crowd listened, silent. He's trying to escalate. We're going to make some dumb decisions here, but sure, let's go that way. I realized the conflict was only going to escalate. He was determined to push on with the logging. But with the forest on our side, we could end the logging at any time. We're ready to defend ourselves. The last stand. There'd been a storm the previous night, but when the final showdown started, the sun was at its most merciless, and the world was almost white with heat. The air smelled of herbs, bark, and tree sap. Insects buzzed lazily in the high grass, stunned by the summer sun. Well, we know it's going to come down to war, so I mean, I guess I may as well be as angry as possible, though that's probably not going to be super beneficial. We lounged in the shadows of the trees, resting after a busy night. We were ready for war. Let's watch the clearing. I watched the clearing with cold detachment, running through the possible scenarios in my head. There weren't so many of us, but everyone in the clearing knew why they were there. Puszka was watching us. Pushcha was watching us. Every time a gust of wind was bringing the wet smell of the forest to my nostrils, I felt her strong, steadfast presence. She knew that we were doing everything in our power to save her. Heavy clouds were hanging low over the trees. The spirits were gathering to support us in the final moments. I felt the forest's presence. I could feel the immense presence of the forest, whose life was a myriad of smaller lives interconnected into one superorganism. And then I looked at us and them and smiled bitterly, because I realized that both sides of the conflict saw the others as the sickness and themselves as the cure. I looked at the harvesters. I looked at the shiny new harvesters lurking across the clearing. Loggers milled around them like ants over a disturbed anthill. Pressure was almost palpable, and tempers were flaring. The cops are gathering, and we should check on the pack. Everyone knows what to do? Olga asked, looking at my pack. I'll keep the security guards occupied, nodded Lisa. And I'll guard the Pushcha's perimeter, growled Daniel. I glanced at the weasels. Weasels were in their positions among the protesters, as agreed. That left the cops to me. I mean, so, that whole, stick to the shadows and, hide the veil kind of thing. I realize, the high rage is the reason for this. I'd keep my eyes on them. I'll keep my eyes on the cops, I said, and we'll make sure that the activists are safe. Yeah, that's the plan, Olga nodded with a bitter expression. Cops are gathering. The police are sympathetic. The police were nervous, huddling in groups and shouting at each other and everyone who was in their way. They clearly didn't want to be there. Something's up. It was apparent that they were waiting for something. Then it reached a boiling point. It reached a boiling point where the minister arrived for a photo op. Could we use that? Are we terribly cunning? We don't have that anymore. But I guess I've got some wisdom, so maybe we can use this to our advantage and not slaughter everyone this time, since last time it didn't go so well. I took it as a good sign. We could use his presence to our advantage in more ways than one. I calmed down slightly. I'm actually kind of okay with that. Journalists swarmed around him, praising his balanced forestry policy as they steered clear of the ugly harvesters. In hindsight, you could argue that what happened next set a chain of events in motion that had life-changing consequences for many. Well, I guess change doesn't happen like that, but I don't know. Some of this feels like we're going to let the game decide, and then others is like, okay, well, what do you think happened? But change didn't happen just like that. There's this notion that change is sudden. Movies and video games would have us believe that it takes one moment, one decision, one knock-on effect to turn the tide. But the world doesn't work like that. It works like a forest, like the Pushcha. Change is like growth. A slow, barely visible process. A series of decisions, yes, but also coincidences of chances being taken and people doing what they can to survive. Change is like growth, and we had grown. The members of my sept had already moved to their positions, and I also had my part to play. Talking is not going to help here. Confronting him is our chance to start negotiating. Negotiations really don't help. They didn't help last time, and I highly doubt we're going to be able to. Although, it kind of felt like we were setting ourselves up. Like, hey, this is an opportunity. And the game is like, okay, well, here. What are you going to do with it? Minister is bad news, yes, but I don't know. I'm also not very. Well, I wasn't before. I wish this had not changed. We were not also very inspirational before, so I'm not probably a very good speaker. Let's just talk about this one. With him at the scene, everything will get harder, I sighed, pointing at the minister. Olga nodded. But I wasn't ready to give up. I kind of am. I don't know. I don't have a lot of glory. And I don't know if glory has anything pertaining to, trying to be a leader. But I feel like since we're high in wisdom, it would behoove me to try to think rather than fight. Especially since, I don't know, God. Going back to regroup, giving yourself a little bit of time. I don't know. I mean, that lets them be in charge, right? I don't know how to handle this properly, so let's just do this one and dig ourselves a hole here. I wasn't ready to give up. Ah, fuck, I knew this was going to give me this again. Alright. It's our chance to start negotiations. Olga raised her eyebrow. If you think there's any sense in talking to them, she smirked, now's the fucking time. She grabbed me by the elbow and literally dragged me across the clearing to where the minister and his people were standing. Think about what to say, because that is a thing. A wisdom choice is one where I think about it for a bit. As we were pushing through the crowd, I planned what I was going to say. I was pretty confident. I'm glad you are. I had it all planned out and felt quite confident, but Olga had her own plans. Minister! Minister! She yelled. You have a moment to talk about what's really going on in the forest. I caught his gaze. He looked at us coldly, like we were vermin. His eyes were distinctly dark and lifeless, like a shark, I thought suddenly. No, he said, smiling. We don't talk to terrorists. I wrapped my arms around Olga's chest and pulled her back before she could jump at him. I could feel her body tense and change already on it, with the change already on its way. Not now, not here, I said to her. We'll find another way. We are supposed to call on the spirits, right? Call upon the spirits, call upon the forest. Called on spirits. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I bit my wrist, and when my drops of blood dripped on the earth, I spoke the words, and the spirits answered. And then I felt a cold gust of wind, and a heavy droplet landed on my nose. The spirits of the Pushcha had answered our call. I don't know what closing my eyes would be doing. Howling at the sky would be weird. Just choose a neutral option. I braced myself. None of the humans noticed as the heavy clouds gathered over the clearing. I smiled and braced myself for what was to come. Suddenly, a tempestuous blast of wind almost decked us. A moment later, the heavens opened, and the downpour began. The spirits had come. Lightning struck one of the harvesters, and I laughed. The journalists and police ran for cover, and suddenly we were alone, with the minister and his lonely bodyguard, struggling with an umbrella. Can we intimidate, maybe? We started talking. It seems that we're not going anywhere for a while. I looked the official in the eyes. Maybe we could talk. I could see that the minister was an apt politician, and that he could smell a deal for himself in it all, but I didn't really care. Peace talks. Alright. Well, I sense the ending coming here, but of course there's always going to be the post-game analysis, so I am going to end this one here, and we'll pick this up next time.